The ongoing search for that great video game movie, or even just good, continue. The ongoing search for that great video game movie, or even just good video game movie, continues. Is Tomb Raider 2018 the one that'll break the curse? Let's find out. Tomb Raider is not only a reboot of the Tomb Raider movies, but it's also an adaptation of the rebooted games from 2013. This movie stars Alicia Vikander as Lara Croft, as her dad disappears some time ago during her childhood. She's on her own, she lives a very tough life, despite the fact that her entire family is rich. But anyway, she soon finds clues that leads to where her dad might possibly be, so this leads her on a journey to one of the islands off the coast of Japan to try to see if she can find her dad. And then she comes across something a little more sinister concerning her dad's work. Now, I'm not a big Tomb Raider fan, and it's not because I hate the series, not at all. I'm just not too familiar with the games. I've only played one Tomb Raider game, and that was on the Nokia N-Gage. Yeah, for those of you who don't know what the N-Gage was, Nokia actually made a phone that was supposed to be a gaming console, but it was the dumbest fucking idea ever because the way you had to talk, like, you have your phone right here, the way you had to talk through the N-Gage is like this. It pretty much was the shape of a Game Boy Advance, and it's like holding the top of the Game Boy Advance to your head and talking like this. It was stupid, and I had one. And as I said before, it tried to pass off as a gaming console, and one of the games that I had was Tomb Raider, so that's my only exposure to the franchise. And I've never played the newer games, which I heard were a complete reboot of what was back in the 90s. So obviously, it was time to make a movie out of them, especially considering that Tomb Raider was already made into a movie back in the early 2000s with Angelina Jolie. And given how video game movies usually turn out, those movies were garbage. Now it's time to see if this one would be the movie to break that curse. So, is Tomb Raider that good video game movie that we've all been waiting for? Oh, you were expecting me to do the gladiator thumbs down or thumbs up. No, it's just like this. That's my overall feelings about this movie. It's nowhere near one of the worst video game movies out there. There have been worse, like Mortal Kombat Annihilation, I just mentioned the original Tomb Raider movies, and Assassin's Creed that starred Alicia Vikander's husband, Michael Fassbender. That one was just torture to sit through. The biggest crime that this movie ever commits is that it's boring. Because I'll tell you that Alicia Vikander does try. Most of the time throughout the movie, she's actually very good. She is often charming. And what I also like about this movie is that she's vulnerable. I've read some other reviews where people are mixed on her. Some people say that she's very tough, strong-willed, and not identified as a sexual object, while others say that she's just a punching bag and is kind of weak because she gets her ass kicked a lot in this movie. And yeah, that's true, she does, but I feel like this makes her a little more vulnerable, because she's not invincible, she's just a human being. The big comparison that I can draw to is Alice from the Resident Evil movies. That character is just completely invincible, stone-faced cold, and she might as well be a superhero in her own right. Lara Croft right here, she does get hurt a lot. In all of the current video game movies that we have out there, Lara Croft is like John McClane in the original Die Hard, where you care for her because she's vulnerable and she can get hurt. There are points in this movie where she is definitely put out of commission for a while, because she's not invincible, like I said beforehand. I also appreciate that this is more of a grand movie, because usually video game movies are very cheap, low budget, they feel incredibly fake. This one actually feels more epic. It's like an Indiana Jones type movie, but with Lara Croft, which I feel like that's what the Tomb Raiders kind of were, that and Uncharted. They were Indiana Jones video games. So those are the things that I like about Lara Croft. Everything else, like I said, is not terrible, but it's just boring. The plot in this movie is just kind of generic and dull, which I don't mind a generic plot if it's fun and I like the characters. But outside of Lara Croft, I didn't really care for anyone else in this movie. Her dad was dull through a lot of this movie, and it just didn't seem like he really cared all that much for what was going on. And Walton Goggins, whose idea was it to make Walton Goggins bland? Because he's one of those actors that has those crazy eyes, and he's very energetic and entertaining to watch. You don't make someone like Walton Goggins the villain of the piece and make him just bland. You make him over the top, because at least that'll give me something to remember. Because when you watch stuff like Predators or The Hateful Eight, you remember Walton Goggins, especially in The Hateful Eight. He is super memorable in that movie, and here he's just dull as shit. The action scenes are just kind of dull. Even that sequence that you see in the trailer where Lara Croft is floating down the river and she catches herself on an abandoned rusty plane, it's just kind of bland and nothing too special about that. And some of the dialogue in this movie is pretty bad. You've seen this scene in the trailer where Lara Croft comes across an old video camera that works after 2 decades. Oh well. And it's her dad giving her exposition about what he's worked on, and it pretty much sends her on her way to the adventure. And at the end of all that, once he's given all the exposition, he says, "I hope you never find this tape." I'm like, why would you put that line of dialogue in the movie? I mean, you obviously made the tape in hopes that she would find it, so why would you, at the end, I don't know. It's a stupid cliche to begin with. I just hate the cliche in movies where some character gives the main character exposition from a faraway place or beyond the grave via a recording. It's just downright lazy. And a lot of the movie has other bad dialogue, and they really could have used some punch-up here and there, because it's an adventure movie, like Indiana Jones. You should have some more witty dialogue. You should have more character banter here and there, and this movie just doesn't have it. So I don't have much else to say about this movie. It's definitely better than the first 2 starring Angelina Jolie, but then again, that was a pretty low bar to cross. At the same time, it's not that great or even just good video game movie that we've been hoping for. Alicia Vikander does give it her all, and I do appreciate the film's scope and not really feeling like a cheap film, but the plot's not that exciting, the side characters are rather dull, the action's uninspired, the dialogue's pretty bad, and one crime that this movie commits goes to what I've been saying in some other reviews about what works in a book doesn't work on film. Trying to adapt puzzle-solving sequences from video games into a movie is the worst idea you could ever come up with, because it's not exciting. There are a couple sequences in this movie where you have Lara Croft spending 2, 3, maybe even 5 minutes solving a puzzle, and the music tries to play it up as if it's super exciting and you're invested in it, and you're like, no, this is the kind of thing that you cut out of movies. If you ever go on YouTube and you watch people take video games and kind of turn them into a movie, including all the cutscenes and gameplay, they make sure to cut out all the boring stuff. And that's the big mistake that this movie has. It doesn't cut out the boring stuff that you would in a regular video game. So ultimately, watch at your own risk. It's middle of the road when it comes to video game movies. It's not good at all, but at the same time, it's not terrible. It's just kind of bland. And once again, that search for the great or even just good video game movie continues. And that's my review for Tomb Raider. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment down below and tell me what your thoughts are on the movie, if and when you've seen it. And as always, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there is only one.